Hey there, it's Joe Johnson, host of Beatle Brunch, and it's we're still kind of fab quarantined here inside the house and all across the world, or at least across the country. But it gives us Beatle fans an opportunity to swap stories, to trade memorabilia around, to show you around our studios, and introduce you to some amazingly fantastic people. My guest here is a gentleman that many of you may know if you did the Beatles tribute cruise with me, if you did a couple of other cruises, or even if you happen to be in the California area and you've seen him in person. This guy's incredible. Musician, actor, singer, songwriter. You've written some incredible songs. I'm using up all your time, Tim, but I just want to give you
Oh, Joe, listen. Nobody compliments me like you do, so
I'll give you a great sell. You were in the Linda McCartney story as John. Yeah. You've played John in a couple of other productions, The Last Days of Lennon, Beatle Wives, in your one-man show, Just Imagine, and in the band Revolution, which is where I met you many moons ago. I had to be 20 years ago. We were on the Radisson Seven Seas.
Yes, wasn't that wild?
We had a great time. Was that your first band, or your first of all? Let me say hi to Tim Piper. I've done everything.
Well, hey, Joe Johnson, the mighty Joe Johnson. It's a pleasure to be here, and hey to all Beatle Brunchers out there. And yeah, Joe, we've known each other for many, many years. That was kind of a happy accident. We ended up together on that cruise, and that's where I got to meet you and find out, what a staple you are in this Beatle business. And it's funny because when you're talking, and I was thinking today of my career as a Beatle guy, if you will. There is a Beatle business out there, as you know. Every band in every city in the world has a Beatles act. And, I did it myself. I started around, 1989.
Wow.
So that's a while ago. And we still do Just Imagine, which allows me to be an older John looking back at his life.
Right.
But I've got to meet, I met Paul himself. I met Julia, is that?
John, you met his John's half-sister?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course, through you, Tony.
Right, Tony Bramwell. He's
Tony Bramwell. What a guy.
Yeah.
Sean, Julian, Ringo. I mean, it's been really wild what I've got to do just being a Beatles fan. So I'm thrilled to have had the good luck that I've had.
Was Revolution your first performance opportunity to play John Lennon, or had you done it?
It was. Believe it or not, in 1986 or something, I don't know. I got dumped by a girl, and I went to the want ads trying to seek solace, and I found an ad saying looking for a Paul McCartney to go to Japan. I thought, well, gosh, I could do that, So I found a band, and that band didn't go too far, but it led me to a band called Yesterday. Okay. Yesterday still performs out there, but I didn't really get along with the John Lennon, and I thought I could even do a better job than him, even though I was playing Paul. So it finally gave me the opportunity to step out and do, John was always my favorite anyways, even though personality-wise, I feel I'm more like Paul, people pleaser, kind of a, go-to guy. And John was more, deeper, richer figure. And so I've been studying him for the rest of my life. And it led me to, like you say, Linda McCartney's story, Beatles Wives, in his life, John Lennon's story, where I got to sing at Capitol Records here in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Wonderful experiences.
Yeah, it's great. Now, didn't you once meet Sean at a baggage pickup or something at the airport?
Yeah, I was actually coming home from a Revolution cruise, and it was like midnight, and there was no one there. And it's a long walk, and then you make a right turn, and there's where the carousel is. And I see this guy who I thought, he kind of looks like me. How interesting, because he's a younger guy, and he's got Beatle hair, and he's got glasses on. And he looks up, he's the only one there, and I'm the only one there. And I thought, Christ, that's John Lennon. And I thought, leave him alone. He's on the phone. Don't bother him. I thought, unless he looks up, and puts the phone down, I'll say hello. Well, in that 2 seconds, that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And I thought, well, this is my opportunity. And he was very open and very kind. And I asked him, are you recording? What's your mother doing? And that's when she redid Cut Piece. Do you remember where she had the audience cut off her clothes?
Yes, yeah.
In pieces. She redid that, at 78 years old in Paris. But he was very open and very kind and very unassuming, and it was wonderful. And Julian was the same way, softer than I had imagined. that was at the House of Blues. Got to hang out with him upstairs because we were doing shows there. So, right place, right time. And for the most part, they're all really wonderful people. Yeah. So I've been very fortunate, to have the opportunity.
So I want to talk about what you're doing today, which is really, really interesting. But before we get into that, because I want to get people to hang on to what you have to say at the end.
Sure.
I'm putting together this show, and maybe it's going to air right around the time that people watch this video. Okay. Is I realized that August 9th was a Sunday, which is traditionally the day of my show is broadcast, Beatle Brunch. And I started thinking, well, there's a lot of 9 is a unique number in Beatles history in a lot of different ways. And I thought, well, let me see if I can do a whole hour on 9. So it could be a song that charted number 9. It could be a song that was released on the 9th or recorded in September, or maybe there were 9 cover versions. I just thought, well, let me get super creative about it. And I thought, well, I really should explain to the audience why there is the significance to the number 9. And a lot of our listeners maybe weren't around during the Beatle years originally. So I thought, well, who better to have on than the man who definitely know the answer to that question. So I thought you and I would talk a little bit about number 9 in Beatles.
Oh, let's do it, because I've collected some fascinating factoids that border on the eerie, if you will, associated with John, because really number 9 is mostly associated with John.
Right, that's true.
Okay, when they did the digital remaster, get this, here's where we start, on September 9th, 2009. How about that?
Wow.
That was the remaster of all the
That's right, 9909.
999.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, it was a nod to Lennon and all that number 9 meant to him. Most people remember Revolution number 9, where you have a tape loop, number 9, number 9, number 9, on a 17-minute song? Yeah. And that was John and Yoko, but mostly John, basically taking, tens of loops, tape loops. Remember, this is before digital recording. And just like Tomorrow Never Knows, we've got these tape loops that he and Paul created. John does Revolution number 9, kind of in acknowledgement of his own self and what number 9 means to him. He created a revolution in his mind, and he tried to put it, into an audible situation where we all could share it. And so that's what Revolution 9 is really all about. And of course, that number 9 is an EMI engineer. And I used to do this because I was a second engineer. You'd have these tapes that you would adjust the bias of the recording heads on the tape machines. And so that's exactly what he said. This is EMI, number 9. And he just left it as number 9 as a joke to himself. And it became kind of famous, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you remember it, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a great, and when the remastered CDs came out, you notice that his voice is, the number 9 is moving back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Channels.
Oh, well, that's just it. He was just tripping out, if you will. And the Beatles didn't want that released. Everybody said, no, John, no. But, John was John. He started the group, and he was strong enough to make sure that song ended up on the record.
When you think that they gave up not using Not Guilty and a couple of other songs on the album.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, right.
That, but it's hard to picture the album without it, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, well, if we look back in our history, the Beatles are so special and so significant, and we will never have another group like them. I mean, when you think about rock and roll groups, how many rock and roll groups have Steinway release a John Lennon piano, which they did.
Yeah.
Or Gibson release a series of J160Es, the original, the stripped, and then the psychedelic painted, series. I mean, nobody else has that, Right. But the Beatles do. And they are kind of far, they're way in the lead, then everybody else kind of trails behind, and everyone acknowledges them. Even the heavy metal groups say, well, Beatles. So, anyways, here's another one. He was born, obviously, October 9, 1940. Some even say it's 6:30 in the morning. Now, when you get into numerology, and this is what's interesting about numerology, some say it's nonsense, but John and Yoko were heavily into numerology. As you know, because you've said this in the past, Yoko even had such a hold on John that if she said you need to get on a plane and travel counterclockwise to get rid of bad spirits, he'd do it. Many times. She would even go to Africa to voodoo witch doctors, if you will. I mean, she goes very deep into magic and tarot and all things mystical. I wasn't there, so I can't tell you exactly what happened, but this is, this is documented stuff. All right, get this. His first home that he lived at, now this was with his mother, Julia, and his stepfather, because his father, Fred, Alfred Lennon, kind of at 5 years old, gave the mother an ultimatum, John's coming with me. And John agreed at the beginning until he saw his mother walking away, and he ran after her, no, mommy, mommy, mommy. Wow. So Julia took him back to Liverpool, and Alfred took off because he was a merchant seaman. He was basically like a waiter on a ship. But he just kind of disappeared for John's childhood. And then with Julia, she was really just kind of too immature, if you will, to be able to raise John properly, and she knew it. And that's when Mary Elizabeth, Aunt Mimi, stepped in, her older sister, and said, I'll take him. And that's basically what happened. It wasn't like she stole him. Julia knew she wasn't fit, and they only lived about a mile away, right? Which was interesting because John didn't know that until he was older. And it's like, holy cats, you've been here the whole time, Yeah. Anyways, so they lived, get this, nines again. Number 9, Newcastle Road, Newcastle in Wavertree, Liverpool.
Okay.
Number 9, Newcastle has 9 letters, Wavertree has 9 letters, Liverpool 9 letters. Okay.
Wow.
And that's where he wrote. Now this was really his grandfather's house, so Julia's father's house, the one after 909.
Wow. That's another okay. I hadn't thought about that one.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It gets crazier. He traveled on the number 72 bus, 729, to Liverpool Art College, where he was friends with Stuart Sutcliffe. All right, his first meeting in 57 with McCartney. Now you've got McCartney, 9 letters, Sutcliffe, 9 letters. Okay. The group really started as the Beatles, if you will. I mean, they were Johnny and the Moondogs, and they were the Quarrymen and the Silver Beatles. But as the Beatles, they started in 1960 in Hamburg, and 9 years later, 1969, they broke up.
Wow.
Okay, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's insane. And the thing is that most of the clues make sense. It's not like you're coming up with something really crazy.
Not like you're trying to force an issue to prove something, right? All right, get this. Their first appearance at the Cavern Club, February 9, 1961. Brian Epstein first saw them perform on November 9, 1961. It's crazy, right? And of course, and I'll take a break here, their first record-breaking debut appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show, February 9, 1964.
Wow.
Pretty heavy, huh?
That is pretty heavy. There was a book out a few years ago about the great death hoax of Paul McCartney, and it had so many clues in it, written by this guy, Gary Patterson.
Yes.
And I know this is a different topic, but some of the clues were so compelling that you couldn't help think that they were placed there on purpose. We could get into the clues. That's like a different show. But in a way, it seems like there was so much 9 in John Lennon's life, and it bled into the Beatles as well. Do you think that he at some point maybe went out of his way to make sure that this happened on a 9? After a while, it became so big in his life, or what do you think?
The only thing that I feel that I have fair enough information on where an issue might have been forced to happen, when Sean was born, his second son, from Yoko, she actually had a cesarean to assure that he would be born on John's birthday, October 9.
Wow.
See, because that probably would not have happened.
Okay.
But they wanted him to be born because in Japanese, I don't know what you call it, tradition or psychology, if you're born on your father's birthday, you inherit his soul.
Okay. All right.
Pretty heavy, huh?
Yeah. Do you think Sean has inherited his soul as a, I mean, they seem to have different musical directions, but maybe not, because John was willing to be Yoko crazy on stage and in the record.
He certainly is a chip off the block.
Mhm.
Okay, he doesn't really remind me. Even though, God, I'll tell you, when I met him and he looked up at me and I'm like 2 feet away from him, in his eyes, oh my God, my hair stood up on my arms. I mean, I was looking at John's eyes,
Wow.
and you could see that kind of, when John looked at you with that kind of inquisitive softness, like he just runs so deep. It was fascinating, but I do believe there's aspects of John, and then there's aspects of his mother that, but he's a different animal, to be sure. He's way softer and way, I'm going to say effeminate, if I may. But a dear guy and very, he didn't have to give me the time of day, and he was very open and very, right to me, and I thought it was wonderful.
Did you
I was very
discuss with
fortunate.
him that you portray his dad?
Well, I said, it's funny because I didn't.
You
You
want
don't want to go up to a Beatle and you say, "Hey, I play you,"
Yeah.
But what I said was, "I do your dad's music,"
Oh,
and he looked at the case. He goes, "Oh, I see the Rickenbacker."
wow. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Right.
So he acknowledged it, and it was cool, and that was enough. It didn't matter beyond that. Other than I love your dad enough that I do his music, and I think he appreciated that. I've seen him. To be a son or daughter of a Beatle, you must get the same questions over and over and over. And and you want to talk about you, and they want to know about your dad.
Yeah.
So he had to suffer that for quite a bit. Trying to become himself.
I know that that's the case with Julian. I interviewed him a couple of times, and the last time I
Yeah.
interviewed him, I think it was in 2013 or something, and he was touring with his photography. And he
Yes.
actually told me that the reason he did take up photography was the one thing that they couldn't compare him to his father on, because his father didn't take pictures. He wasn't like Linda. So Julian said, that's why I take photographs and I do exhibits, and it's the one thing
Yes.
I have that I own.
Yeah. And I also got to meet. You said photographs. You just triggered a memory. My brother Greg.
Yeah.
His wife Jackie used to be kind of the in-house photographer at Warner Brothers. So anytime they had a release or a CD release party, she shot the likes of Madonna and whomever, were there. And one day, and I don't know how it transpired, but she got to have an exhibit of her photographs at a place in Beverly Hills. And guess who she shared it with? Michael McCartney.
Oh, yeah.
Is that wild?
That's
Just
awesome.
the two of them. So I got to spend the whole evening with Michael as well, and he had his band Scaffold.
Right.
If you remember that, that's way back when. But what wonderful photographer himself. Anyways, speaking of photographs, shall I give you a couple more?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Did it follow him into his solo life as well?
Which?
With John Lennon, is that what you're talking about, the Nines?
Yes. Well, get this. Where did they live? What did they buy in New York?
They bought the Dakota.
Exactly, which was building number 72.
72.
There's a 9. All right. The number 9 Dream, and you asked me, if I'd call out a song, I'd ask you to play number 9 Dream, if you would. It was on Lennon's 1974 album, Walls and Bridges. You remember that, right?
Sure.
The album was the 9th non-Beatles album of his, issued in the 9th month of the year. And it featured a painting done when Lennon was 11 years old, depicting a footballer with the number 9 on his back.
I can remember the watercolor painting. It's in
Right, right?
Yeah.
And it peaked at number 9 on the Billboard charts. Is that crazy?
Wow. Now you certainly can't plan that. I mean, that's just the way the records land.
Well, it's crazy. And the refrain in the chorus, if you remember, "Ah, Bawakawa, Puse, Puse," featured 9 syllables. whatever. I mean, that's where you go crazy, right? I remember that because I was delivering flowers during the day and playing the LA clubs during the night. And I knew Al Corey. Al Corey was the president of Capitol Records at the time. And he didn't like John because John put Al in his place. And Al had quite the ego. I mean, I'd even go to Al's house. I knew his wife, Mary Ann, and a couple kids that he had. And he said, that bastard, because John would, what Al tried to do on that song, he didn't want to release because Apawakawa, pussy. He goes, you're not putting, pussy in the lyrics. And he said, no, it's going to be pronounced pussy, which he had to let it go. Once again, Lennon wins. Anyways, Mind Games and Rock and Roll contained 9 letters in their titles. Coincidence? I don't know. And here's the I'm running out of 9s, but that's been a lot. That's just amazing.
That's your next book right there.
Well, all right. Let me give you one more, which really nails it home. Okay. We all know that on December 8th, 1980, in New York, 10:30, Lennon was shot and killed. But really, if you're in Liverpool, it's the 9th.
It's the next day, yeah.
Right? Right. He was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital in Manhattan, both with 9 letters, on 9th Avenue, where he was pronounced dead.
Wow.
That's about all I can say.
Yeah. I mean, and now here we are in 2020, where we're coming up on what would have been his 80th birthday. And
it's amazing, right?
Coming up on the 40th anniversary of his passing. And
yes.
It won't be long before he'll have been gone longer than he was alive, which is a very sad statistic.
These guys did so much in such a compressed amount of time. So, so much content and creativity that, Boston would come out with an album, you wait 5 years for the follow-up, right? The Beatles released, I don't know how many it was, I'd have to go back, but, a couple albums a year, right?
Yeah.
And singles in between, it just knocking them out, one after the next. And most of them brilliant.
And the strange thing is they'd stop in the middle of the White Album and record a single, Hey Jude and Revolution, that was not in the album.
Right. One of their decisions were to not, because they knew that bands would, record a song and be a hit, and then they'd quickly come out with an album with the same song and a bunch of flaky, secondary songs.
Sure.
They didn't want to do that. They wanted the singles to be singles and the albums not even to contain the singles. So If you look at the British versions, you'll see that that's the way it goes. You'll have a single, but you'll have an album without that single because they wanted everything to be new and different.
You have an album like Sgt. Pepper. I don't recall if there was ever an American single from that album.
Well, you're right. What had happened, Joe, the first songs they recorded were when they decided, that touring was over. And they said, let's get serious about our songwriting. The first 2 that came out, which were supposed to be on the Sgt. Pepper album, were Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane. They were both looking back at their childhood, and kind of competing with each other in their different styles on how they would tell their stories. Because it was Christmas time and there were no singles in the can to be released, EMI pushed Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, really a double A-sided single, if you will, to be released for Christmas to make money, which George Martin later said that he regretted doing that. He thought that was the biggest regret he'd ever had because it should have been part of Sgt. Pepper, but it wasn't. Right. And so there's your release from Sgt. Pepper.
Wow. Yeah. Great stuff. And there's so much.
I know. It's amazing. With these guys, it just goes on and on and on.
I study like you do, and I love running across, and usually it's verified if one of the Beatles actually talks about it and you have the audio, but, where there were mistakes that they made in songs, but they left them in because it made him sound cool. Like, I think it was in Lady Madonna, she becomes he, and,
Right.
and that kind of
Well,
thing.
and even in Hey Jude, where Paul goes, the movement you need. Wait a minute, movement, no. And Joe goes, no, you're keeping it. That's the best word you came up with. Yeah, things like that all the time. Or the fun of the Beatles recordings is sometimes you have just pure mistakes where they're maybe singing different lyrics, on the same level, but they didn't go
Right.
back and fix it. And how do you get away with that? Well, if you're the Beatles, you get away with it.
I remember seeing that show later with Bob Costas, and he did a terrific interview with Paul McCartney. But he had John from the Mamas and the Papas, John Phillips, on one night.
Yes.
And he was asking him about the song "I Saw Her Again," where they're singing in the middle of the song. He goes, I saw her again last night." And I'll
Right.
forget, because Bob Costas asked John Phillips. He goes, "Was that a mistake or was it on purpose?" He said,
Right.
"Well, it was a mistake, but we
Yeah.
thought it sounded cool, and the Beatles did stuff like that, so we
Right.
put it in."
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the wonderful thing, about the Beatles albums. You hear little sounds and little things that nobody else would leave in. It just makes you feel like you're there in a way.
Yeah.
And they always try something different. Ringo playing the suitcase.
Yeah.
Or Paul just tapping his foot on Blackbird. Different things, or the bass harmonicas on "Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were
wonderful.
playing somebody through a comb with toilet paper wrapped around
Yes,
it.
yes, exactly.
One of these songs on Pepper, but yeah, it's amazing. And the best part about it, Tim, is you and I are both still talking about them 50 plus years later, and enjoying the music and bringing younger kids, people into the Beatles and Beatles solo music and the festivals and the Abbey Road on the Rivers and all these things.
Well, let me ask you, Joe, if I may, being as long as you've been on top of it, and being one of the main guys in the United States doing it, we even have Chris Carter out here, but he's no Joe Johnson.
Right.
No, really. How do you feel? About the changes in the Beatles audience today?
Some people, when you talk to radio programmers, they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, we would play Beatle Brunch, but we don't really play Beatles anymore." But yet, I recently saw a survey that said the Beatles were far and away the #1 band of all time.
I saw that. Yes,
and it's
I know
hard,
what you're talking about.
and then you can argue with somebody at a radio station, say you should play the show, and because of that fact. But I appreciate the younger fans, and there are a lot of YouTube videos of little kids, playing and singing Beatles songs, and
Yes.
you'll look and they have millions of views, and it's not just our age viewing them; it's their peers and younger people. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw that on that Netflix, the Beat Bugs. These little bugs that live underground, and they sing Beatle music, and you have celebrities like Sia and others that sing the songs on the soundtrack. So
right, until they yanked it off, unfortunately. But
is it no longer on? Okay,
they yanked it. Yeah, it was something to do with copyright issues.
Oh, that's too bad.
Some lawyers not making enough money. So.
And I was reading something recently, maybe it was a Facebook, somebody posted the first time they saw the Beatles was on the Beatle cartoons in 65 or 6, and the Beatles hated those. But again, it becomes some kind of forced bit of our past culture. They're here.
Well, again, where do you see a Rolling Stones cartoon? You just don't. Or is Keith Richards dead? I mean, you don't have that. That's where the Beatles always had that kind of step up, and a wonderful story, wonderful group, wonderful legend. That we get to study over and over, and it seems, especially with musicians. I play with a band out here called the Beat Tunes as well that does Beatles music.
Yeah.
And because, I know the Beatles music as well as any of them, I actually play bass, because I just like being different. I don't have to be John. I just get to sing songs with them.
Right.
But you're listening to the records for the umpteenth time, and it seems like you always discover something new. You know what I'm saying? George's vocal on that is, actually below John's, just interesting stuff that just never kind of fails to stimulate, and excite us as musicians.
That's what I loved about the box sets that have been coming out that Charles Martin has produced the past couple of years. And the fact that when you listen to a different version or a different mix or a different vocal track, you hear like that little joke that one of them was telling you. Hear John snapping his gum constantly while he's
Yes.
getting ready to sing, and them taking breaths and laughing, giggling in the background, and that
How
stuff I love.
wonderful! How wonderful that Giles, was there, the son of
Yeah,
George Martin, who was just so, I don't want to say underrated, but maybe we didn't give him the deserved acknowledgement that he should have had,
yeah,
because he basically took these guys. When he signed them, he hadn't even seen them. The EMI audition was with two other engineers,
right.
and George actually just heard the tape. So when he met them and asked them, yeah, and he basically said, "Listen, I kind of like what I hear. The drummer's going to have to be replaced for the recordings. You do what you want with them." Right? We know what that led to.
Yeah,
Uh, and I've had the great honor of being able to play with Pete Best. And it was just Rogue's birthday, his brother, half brother through, Neil Aspinall.
hmm.
Neil Aspinall,
Right,
who was,
right.
yeah, who ended up at the end being the president of Apple Records. But in the beginning, he basically just drove the van that got them to gigs. So he was a roadie, if you will.
Right.
But the van belonged to Mona Best. And Neil and Mona, even though Neil was kind of half her age, had an affair. And that's where Rogue came from.
Well, yeah. And for a while,
Yeah.
it seemed like the Americans at least didn't know that Rogue was part of Neil Aspinall.
Oh, no. When the Beatles, when Brian Epstein took over and they first started getting their public persona going, they ran around and collected all the pictures from Hamburg and basically buried them.
Wow.
Because they didn't, Brian didn't want the world to see the Beatles as he had known them. He wanted this new, coiffed,
Right.
polished thing to be, well, and he was right, against John's better judgment, because John hated it. He didn't want to wear a tie and a suit, but he knew that Brian had something inside of him that told him, this is what's going to make you guys break through to the general public. And he was right.
Yeah.
But they went around and collected everything they knew that could have taken them down.
And it's funny, on the cover of Sgt. Pepper, some of the items on that belonged to Mona Best. And I remember Rogue telling me that John stayed friendly with Mona, and he borrowed like the tuba or something from.
Yes, I think the medals that he's wearing.
Medals, right? Yeah.
Were from the Best family, and he borrowed them. Interesting. And Pete's a great guy. I still truly believe that he doesn't know why he wasn't included, but
yeah.
But the rest is history, and Ringo certainly was right for the Beatles. It wouldn't have been the Beatles without Ringo.
And actually, I thought it was very nice that on the 80th birthday of Ringo, Pete Best posted on social media, "Happy birthday, Ringo." It was kind of
That's nice, isn't it? It is wonderful, and you can still, as they come out. That's the great thing about the internet. When we were kids, we'd have a World Book Encyclopedia, or right, if we needed information. Now we can go to YouTube and find just about anything in the world, and I just saw some pictures, old pictures, had to be 62, where you see Pete and Ringo on the same stage.
Wow. Because Pete's band was coming on different time or something?
Or Ringo was sitting in maybe for a number with the Beatles. Yeah, just fascinating. So they were a lot tighter, a lot closer than people remember.
Right. Well, Tim, I want to ask you about Talks with John. I think it's a brilliant piece that you've put together. And can you tell us about it and how it came about?
I'd love to. I have a fantastic partner out here in LA. Her name is Tammy Trujillo. And Tammy Trujillo has done about everything you could do as a female broadcaster. She's kind of a pioneer. She worked with KFWB, KFI, KNX. She still works for KPCC and KLAA, which is the Angels station. And she teaches broadcasting at CSUN, which is Cal State University of Northridge. So she's a busy gal. Yeah. Now, it was funny because about 20 years ago, I was playing a thing called Retrofest, where you had like Andy Kim and
Right.
Ron Dante from the Archies, right? And Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods, and right, and us doing the Beatles. And I was leaving. I was doing an idiot check in my dressing room, and I walked in on her dressing. Now I never saw a thing. I remember that, but she whisked me out of there in no time. And that's how we remember our initial meeting. Well, 20 years later, she had seen Just Imagine with her husband, Randy. Randy Hill plays lead guitar for Sha Na Na.
Okay.
In fact, I just got to see Sha Na Na's 50th anniversary at the Grammy Museum Hall of Fame here in LA for playing Woodstock.
Right. That's
And,
Red Woodstock.
and get this, you know why they played Woodstock? Because Jimi Hendrix discovered them in Greenwich Village. And he was huge fans of Sha Na Na. And when they asked Jimmy, would you play Woodstock? He goes, I will if you allow Sha Na Na to open for me.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
And then he opened for the Monkees.
Right.
Before Woodstock, but in the mid 60s, late 60s.
Yeah, well, I think that was Mickey's doing. Mickey saw the brilliance in Jimmy, but the Monkey fans weren't ready for Jimi Hendrix.
Right. They weren't there.
And here they are screaming, Foxy Davy, da da. And Jimmy said, enough of this, and he quit that tour. Anyways, I forgot what we were talking about, but
John, yeah.
Yeah. Well, say it again.
Oh, well, your talks with John, your podcast.
Oh, talk with John. Thank you. So Tammy has an animal rescue called the Rescue Riders, where she and her husband Randy will go as far as Tijuana. There's a collection of people that basically just live to help save animals that are going to be euthanized, or that have had some kind of atrocity. Somebody threw them out of a car or something like that, and these people will put up these red flags on the internet, but they're kind of attached to each other. So they're one of the first ones that get these calls, and they'll go great distances to get these animals and bring them from a shelter to a doctor to try to find them a permanent home. She's coming home from Arizona. This is about a year and a third ago, summer. And she says she's driving through the Arizona desert late at night, and it's dark, and she feels kind of like a tap on her shoulder. And she says, you need to do a podcast featuring John Lennon. And she's thinking, why am I hearing this? And in that same conversation, because she's going, well, I don't know any, he goes, and get Tim Piper. That was really the true beginning of what happened. So she contacts me out of nowhere. I mean, we had met since I walked into her dressing room 20 years earlier. And she calls me and says, would you meet me in Pasadena after I do my broadcast? And I'd like to just ask you a few questions. She wanted to see how well I knew my Lennon stuff, and how could I pull off what she had in mind?
Right. Which
I think I do a fairly good job. So she basically, we had a lunch that lasted, 3 hours. And next thing you know, I'm helping them move from, Altadena to Northridge, which is where I live. And she builds a studio with old radio gear because she still does editing and stuff herself. She's an expert at it. And we start this podcast, and that was 59 episodes ago, one a week.
That's amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's an hour each, and it takes me another 2 or 3 hours to edit it down so I don't sound too stupid. And then we present it on what's called Boss Radio. Now, Boss Radio out here, you probably remember KHJ.
Sure. Well, it was featured. A lot of that stuff was featured in that movie, the Quentin Tarantino.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Right, KHJ, the Boss Jocks. So Boss Radio is kind of a mold from KHJ Boss Radio back in the day, but it's an internet station. But we were approached to present our podcast, and we said, yes, absolutely. So Talks with John is just that. The premise is, what if John were still with us? What would it be to be like a fly on the wall, and you get to sit in with John and his good friend Tammy Trujillo every week as they talk about anything and everything pertinent to today's world. And especially in today's world where it's just madness.
Yeah.
And then we could, then we also, transcend into backstories of the Beatles, Well, how did this come about? Well, I might explain something like, in Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, I basically just gave up and told George, I want to smell the sawdust on the floor when I hear the song. And I said, you can do it, George. And I left, and George goes to Jeff Emmerich and instructs him to cut up pieces of calliope and circus organ tapes, throw them in the air, pick them up, splice them together at random, and that's what you hear at the end of the song, which sounds like circus madness, but that's the kind of stuff we get to do.
Oh.
We also, for anybody that wants to tune in, because we feature Joe Johnson every week, we have something called the Come Together Club. As you can tell, everything is Beatles oriented, right? Why not? So
Right.
The Come Together Club is basically just that. It's a Facebook page. So just type in under your search the Come Together Club, and you'll come to our page. And every Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, we transmit a live show, and we feature people like Joe Johnson or unsigned artists or just interesting people that have a positive spin on today's world. Because we're all kind of, as like with your Fab quarantine, and we've got, we're quarantined together too. We're in our social bubble, but we get to congregate with people through the internet, which is what we're doing right here. And I appreciate you having me on. That's very, very generous of you.
Oh, it's great, Tim. It's a lifelong friendship, and a couple thousand miles apart. But with Zoom, it seems like you're next door. So that's really great. Well, Tim Piper, TimPiperMusic.com or TalksWithJohn.com, and
the Come Together Club every Saturday.
Every Saturday, the Come Together Club on Facebook, and you're easy to find Tim Piper. I tracked him down from South Florida to California, and always a pleasure.
Joe, I would have seen you at the Abbey Road on the River. I just got a call from Gary Jacob, and he finally decided to cancel the whole thing.
Are you talking about the one coming up in October?
Yes, for Lennon's birthday.
Oh, I haven't seen that posting yet, but I'll have to.
Oh, well, he'd been planning it for a long time because I had been in his company for years. I did the first 7 years as a headliner with his, we started in Cleveland, Ohio.
Right.
We went to Louisville. We went to Jeffersonville, Indiana. I think we'd be going back to Louisville to commemorate Lennon's 80th birthday, but he finally called me and said, Tim, I don't know, what do you think? And I said, you're going to lose a lot of people. They're not going to show. And he said, I think you're right. He goes, I think I'm going to postpone it. So whatever that means.
Right. Okay. Well,
I know you've done several with him.
And I joined it a couple of years ago, but I haven't.
Yes.
I was there when you were there, so maybe.
Yes, I would have loved to have seen you again, but we'll find a way.
All right, brother. Well, listen, my best to Tammy. Congrats on all the success, and it's been such a great lifelong friendship. At least the last half of our lives, catching up and watching you guys play and perform, and your knowledge and your artistry is second.
Well, thank you. I'm a true Beatles aficionado, as are you, and it's great to know you. And we've had lots of pleasurable times together, and thank you again.
All right, Tim Piper, you're a great guy, man. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks.